Yeah, welcome everybody who's joining us on Zoom. And if you're joining us on YouTube, that's also fantastic. Really glad that you're with us tonight. Chris, how are things down in wherever it is? You live in Newmarket, is that what it's called?
Newmarket Township. Yep.
Yeah,
So just south of
down there.
Well, it's still freezing cold. I was sad because we ended up having the snowstorm after I had put down some early lawn treatment stuff, and then everything froze up again. So all my good work, but that's okay. I know the forecast is going to come about, and it'll be good.
Yeah, it looks like Saturday things kind of turn back around for us.
That's right.
So, okay, everybody who's with us on Zoom, you can see maybe down at the bottom of your screen that there is a Q&A button, and we want to invite you to use that to submit questions to us during the meeting. Chris and I are going to pause a few times during the presentation to take some questions based on the section that we've just covered. So you can do that. If you're joining us on YouTube, you should see kind of a sidebar where you can put comments, and we have Pastor Dave is monitoring that. Chris and I can't see that, but Pastor Dave is going to be looking at that and feeding any questions that come in on that interface to us in Zoom. So I don't know how well this is going to work. We're going to do our best, everyone. If you're left with a question at the end of the night that we didn't cover, I hope that you'll reach out to us personally and directly. We'd be happy to have a phone conversation with you or email or whatever you'd like. So we'll do our best to make it happen, okay?
Absolutely, and we'll cover that again in a little bit here as we get rolling. We're just taking a little bit of time here. It's just past 6:30 right now, so we'll just maybe wait another minute and a half here to make sure that everyone is getting checked in and online. We were able to do this through Zoom's webinar functionality because it allows us to know that you're involved. It gives us the opportunity to do this Q&A window that we'll be using, and then also because if you're on the Zoom app and watching us that way, it's able to register you, and we know that you're going to be watching. Hopefully you've registered and are still tuning in, but that gives us some tracking ability and knowing that we've had some people join us that way. And then obviously through YouTube, we'll see people lighting up in the chat window on YouTube as well. So as we get going here, let some other people join in. We'll get started here with the actual presentation. We do have some slides. It's the other reason we wanted to do this format with the webinar, is because it allows us to actually then put up our slides, and Jonathan's put that up here now. He's setting it up for us, so we'll get through the slideshow, and you'll be able to see that. Whoever's speaking is going to be in this little box up in the upper corner, and then he'll tab through the slides as we get through that. So what do you think, Brad? Should we get started here?
Yeah, I think let's go ahead and get rolling. Maybe we can, maybe during when it's time for our first set of questions and answers, just kind of run through the functionality of that again.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll cover it a couple times here. So first of all, just to start it off, welcome to our information meeting. My name is Chris Pearson. I am the chairman of the board of elders here at Valley Christian Church, and I'm joined by Brad Dewing, who is our transition pastor. We'll be hosting this webinar and information meeting tonight. And as we get started here, Brad, could you go ahead and say a word of prayer for us?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks, Chris. Let's pray, everyone. God, tonight, as we cover some important business and information related to our Valley Christian Church family, we ask, God, that first of all, we know that you're with us, and we thank you for that. We ask, God, for your blessing upon our time together as we're in our own homes coming together through this webinar process. We pray, God, that the technology would be smooth and that we would be able to meet effectively and in an orderly way. And God, I pray that we would all be willing to surrender to your leadership. We believe Valley is your church. And God, that we would be open to any changes that we hear about tonight and trust you that you are leading us forward, and that we would always be wondering what our place in our church family is and how we can make our unique contribution to our church family. So we thank you for this time and pray that it glorifies you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks a lot, Brad. So I just wanted to get us started by walking through the agenda for tonight's meeting. Now, first of all, just to let you know, this isn't a formal business meeting. This isn't a covenant member meeting. In fact, we knew that we wanted to make this a meeting for our entire church family. So all of our congregation to come together, whether you're a covenant member or not. This is information that impacts all of us here at Valley Christian Church. And I think, as you've probably heard if you've been listening to Pastor Dave and Pastor Brad do their morning devotions on YouTube each day this week. Last couple of days, they've been mentioning that this is something that we've actually been planning on doing now for a few months before the COVID-19 stay-at-home orders went into place. We were planning to come together and have this meeting because it's an important meeting with a lot of good information for Valley Christian Church's family. So if we want to go ahead and step through the meeting agenda here, Jonathan, first of all, we'll be talking about some staff changes that'll be coming up in the church's future. We'll be talking about pastoral transition. And of course, that is the transition between Dave Burkham and Brad Dewing as our lead pastor. We'll be doing a little bit of a finance update, nothing too heavy, just kind of a high-level overview of where our standing is financially as a church. We'll be talking about some worship changes coming up in the future and things we're hoping will get rolling as soon as we're able to come together personally again. And then finally, some updates on some future meetings that will be covenant member oriented coming up in the fall and also again next winter. So to get started, the first topic that we have in front of us, well, I'm actually, sorry, I forgot about this slide. Submitting questions. I forgot we had this slide in here. We've talked about this a couple times. In case you've just joined us, thanks for joining on Zoom. If you are on Zoom, you can use the Q&A button that's at the bottom of your Zoom window, not the chat function. I think we actually turned off the chat function, but use the Q&A button in the Zoom app. And when you do that, you'll be able to submit the question, and then we are going to answer those during a couple different parts of our meeting tonight. So in between some of the content that we're presenting in some of the topics, we'll have a time for some Q&A, and we're going to answer those verbally as you write them into us. The other way you can submit questions is via YouTube. If you're watching on the live stream on YouTube, there is a sidebar that's basically a chat window. It's a live chat. Use that chat sidebar. And we have Pastor Dave actually collecting those questions, and then he's sending them to us through a different chat function on the webinar so we can answer those at the appropriate time. And then finally, if you're not able to get a question in through either one of those ways, it's not working, the technology, and you just have plain old email available, go ahead and send an email to office@valleycc.org. And that is an email that Pastor Dave will be able to receive. And then again, plug it over to me and Brad so we can answer them at the appropriate times. So we'll cover those ways to submit questions going to the Q&A sections. But our first topic to get to then tonight is staff changes. Now, these staff changes, I just want to start out by saying that, again, because we've been planning this meeting for quite some time, I can tell you that the staff changes we're going to be telling you about tonight are changes that your church leaders have known about for quite some time. In fact, going back to close to a year ago, we started talking through some things that we saw that were forthcoming and praying and discerning and planning over them, the board of elders along with the pastoral staff. So this isn't something that's sudden. It has nothing to do with our church finances. It has nothing to do with what's happening with the COVID-19 shutdown of normal life as we know it. So staff changes are positive from my point of view, and I think everyone's point of view. going forward. And I think you'll understand why in a little bit here. But before we get into what those changes are, let's just talk about who our current staff members are, and just so you're acquainted about who we're talking about. Our current pastoral staff, we have 2 full-time pastors. Dave Burkham is our lead pastor. Brad Doing is our transition pastor. And as far as our associate pastors are concerned, we have 2 part-time pastors and 1 full-time pastor. Our part-time guys are Micah McClellan, who's our associate pastor for children and families, Mike Nelson, who's our associate pastor for youth and families, and then Jonathan Miller, who's our full-time associate pastor for worship and music. As far as our administrative or kind of nuts and bolts, keeping things running, the day-to-day type staff, we have Kirk Douglas, who is our business and facility manager, Amy Het, who is our part-time office staffer, and Jackie Nelson, also a part-time office staffer. Those 2 women share their duties in our front office, making sure that they're keeping the day-to-day rolling and keeping everyone plugged in membership-wise, community-wise at the church. So our first change that we want to talk about has to do with Jonathan Miller, who is our worship pastor. He's actually running the show for us in the background, so to speak. So I'm going to ask Jonathan to go ahead and make his video live, and then he can join us and he can personally tell you what changes are ahead for him in his role here at Valley Christian Church. Jonathan?
Hello, everyone. Can you see me now? I think you should. I can't see because I'm monitoring on another screen, but oh, there I am. All right. Just want to make sure you could see me. As Chris mentioned, we have some staff changes going on, and like he mentioned, these changes have been kind of in the works for almost a year. So for me, this is kind of old news, like something I've been kind of working through, but for many of you, it might be the first time you're hearing that. So I wanted to just kind of summarize my thoughts, and I wrote it out because I'm the kind of guy that just rambles on, and so want to be concise, want to be clear, but just bear with me, and I want to just read to you about my transition. So, Valley family, after much prayer and consideration, I have decided to change careers. Starting in July, I will be reducing my employed role at Valley to part-time while I pursue my new goal of becoming a licensed electrician. Now, this change, as I said, may feel very odd or sudden to you if this is the first time you're hearing about it. But I want you to know and understand that I've been thinking about it and working towards it it has been almost a year. Let me clarify a couple things, because there's probably a bunch of questions in your mind. First off, I have no intention of leaving Valley Christian Church, the community. In my mind, my ministry does not change. Instead, I'm simply changing where my paycheck comes from. I will still be involved in worship ministry and the church body life of Valley as much as I can. Second thing, this change is my decision. No one suggested I make this change. It was not brought on by fear of personal or financial uncertainty. I've always loved working with my hands, and during the last church expansion project, I realized that I really enjoyed that work, and the trades was something that I could really see doing as a second career. So I kind of wanted to pursue that and think about it. And the more I looked into it, the more it seemed like a real possibility. The third thing I want to say is that the leadership at Valley has been nothing but supportive of my desire to pursue this. When I told Brad and Dave, they were initially shocked, of course, but ultimately receptive and 100% supportive. And I've had the total support and guidance and care from the elders as well. It's been much appreciated. As I reduce my role as worship leader, I hope to continue serving on staff and particularly overseeing audio, video, and worship tech for at least the next fiscal year, depending upon the needs of the church and my availability. I also plan to serve on the worship team as a musician and leader as much as possible. I'm looking forward to doing it as a volunteer. And my main desire in this transition is to have it be as smooth as possible. I don't want to leave a hole in the leadership needs of Valley. So I'll be sticking around and pitching in to do whatever I can in the midst of that. And like I said, this is a very condensed version of much thought, conversation, exploration, and prayer that's occurred over the last year. So if you have any further questions or want to ask me more about the details, please feel free to contact me anytime. There's a lot more, but like I said, I want to keep it concise. So I look forward to continued relationships and continued serving with the Valley family in this new capacity. So thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan. And one thing that's kind of unfortunate about this setting is I know that if we were in person right now at the church, everyone would be clapping, right? There would be a round of applause. Our church loves you so dearly, and we're very, very happy. I can speak on behalf of the elders, and I know you've heard this from the elders and the staff already, that we're proud of you. We're glad, we're blessed to have you in our church family, and blessed that you're going to continue on helping us with worship tech. You talked about how this has been a long time coming, and I remember last fall when you came over to my place, my property, and helped me fell a couple trees and get some wood chopped up, and we chatted through it a little bit. And one of the things that we talked about was how it's important to know that your calling can change, that God can put different things on your heart. And I appreciate you anecdotally telling everyone about how when you started helping out on the construction and expansion project, God put it on your heart. I love to work with my hands. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So again, thank you very, very much for bringing this forward for the info meeting tonight. And I'm sure people are going to give you their blessings. So our next change is going to come from another member of our staff who's got another announcement to make, so to speak. And it's another member that's near and dear to our hearts. Of course, all of our staffers are. But I'd like to turn it over now to Kirk Douglas, who's going to tell us about some changes that are coming up in his role at Valley as well. So Kirk.
Jonathan, you want to turn my video on?
Sure thing, Kirk. Just a second here.
In the meantime, we have the wonderful.
Just so you know that I am really here.
Hold on a sec. All right, sorry. Give me a second here.
You have to turn your picture. Are you not putting your face on?
He's trying to. He had me blocked. There we go. Hello, everyone. Good to be with you, at least a face anyway. I've often heard the phrase, "You'll know when it's time to retire." And when I was younger, I didn't really understand that phrase, but I now know that it's true. It has hit me, and it's time. I've been in the workforce since 1978. I've also been involved with church property and finance for 2 churches spanning over 30 years. Very seldom during my working days in the corporate world and doing work with the church have I really taken time for myself personally. Well, it's time now. These pictures are kind of a dream of mine, and I like to get out and fish, but for the last 40 years, I maybe have gone fishing once a year. So I plan to change that a little bit. Teresa and I plan to spend more time doing things that we enjoy personally, seeing grandkids and our kids. That's not nice that you're texting me. So we will still be involved with Valley, but we'll be away more frequently. I want to make sure that I thank everyone for the support, your help, your being volunteers, and your influence on me. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Kirk. And I think it's a huge testimony to you and especially to our church family that this feels bittersweet, right? And shame on you for not muting your phone. Kirk, obviously we all love you so very much. And I'm glad that you pointed out that you have been doing work that you do for Valley Christian Church for a long time, not just for Valley, but for a previous church. Kirk Douglas has been wearer of many hats at Valley. He's helped out on tons of projects at our old property, previous property, current property. As you know, he was the heart and soul behind getting us moved down to Iberia Avenue, renovating and constructing the expansion on Iberia Avenue. But in addition to that, he was in charge of overseeing our finances and making sure that we were keeping our bills paid. And it's been an honor and a privilege to work with you, Kirk, and to enjoy the basically the gift that that you've given to Valley Christian Church through your God-given talents. So thank you very much. And again, I know that if we were all together right now in the flesh, we would all be standing up and applauding for you as well. So thank you so very much. So what does this mean for how the staff looks moving forward? So that's the slide we're looking for right there. Thanks, Jonathan. Our future ministry staff roles. Jonathan's going to stick around with us. He's going to be doing a little bit each week starting after July 1st to keep us where we need to be for worship technology and doing some facilities work as he's able. But then because of Kirk's retirement, we're asking both Amy Hett and Jackie Nelson to step up to the plate a little bit more. We're going to be increasing their hours. Amy's going to be in charge of the front office, so to speak, and Jackie's going to be along her side to be doing the heavy lifting on administration and finance issues. And both of them well qualified with this, both of them with background, and they're both doing this kind of stuff for the church right now, but they're just going to be learning from Kirk the best they can over the next couple months. And he'll be handing off the baton, and they've got a good solid footing to go on from that. So as far as our future pastoral staff roles are concerned, we'll be looking forward to this kind of a setup. And Brad is going to be talking about this in this next part of our presentation tonight. But we have chosen Brad as the congregation. The covenant membership have approved him to be our transition pastor, to enter the transition process to become our lead pastor. We will be having a meeting this winter to then confirm him as the lead pastor, and that'll be in January. When Brad becomes the lead pastor, Dave Burkham will then become an assistant pastor. He's still going to be full-time, and he's still going to have a full-time status as a pastor with the church. That means he remains, as will Brad, members of the Board of Elders. But the roles will change between these two gentlemen, and Brad will walk you through that. For Micah and Mike, they'll remain our part-time associate pastors for children and youth, respectively, and they'll have some additional responsibilities as well as Brad walks into the lead pastor role. So we'll have some time to answer many questions, which I'm sure that you have forthcoming with regard to these staff changes, but we're going to save those after Brad has a chance to talk about the pastoral transition. So Brad, I'm going to hand it off to you for that part of the presentation.
All right, thank you, Chris. And I too want to thank both Kirk and Jonathan personally for their service to our church family. Can't really express how much we love and appreciate you. It's good news that you're going to be sticking with us, though not in the same roles that you've had. So that is some good news for us. It was a little more than a year ago, friends, that we began to talk about a pastoral transition between Pastor Dave and myself, me moving toward becoming the lead pastor. And so I wanted to give you an update tonight kind of on where we are now, where things are going to be this summer, beginning in July. There's sort of another step that we're going to take. And then the final step would be in January, if we all agree that we're feeling good about that transition and we vote on that, then there will be that final step. So let's, Jonathan, could you advance to the next slide? So friends, this column sort of lays out our current reality for both Dave and I. You can see our responsibilities as they are today. Dave is working primarily on preaching, adult discipleship, adult fellowship, pastoral care and visitation, community outreach connections, and he's also overseeing the whole staff, all of the deacons, and really all of the ministry that's happening at Valley. And what I've been working on to this point is I've been working with some marriage and parenting programs, life wellness initiatives. I'm overseeing Mike Nelson's work with our youth. I'm overseeing Micah's work with our children's ministry. I preach when needed. And of course, I'm involved in some pastoral care. So that describes our current reality. Now I'm going to ask Jonathan to just put up another column. This one's not going to change. Now, as we move toward July, you can see, and I've highlighted a couple of things that Pastor Dave is going to take on that are going to be new to him. And that is that based on what we've just heard from Jonathan, that he's going to be stepping away from a leadership role with worship and music. Pastor Dave is going to take that on as part of his responsibilities. And I do just want to reiterate at this point that Jonathan's announcement and news to us came first. And then it was decided that Pastor Dave could pick up that piece from Jonathan. There wasn't any pressure from Dave saying, I'd like to do worship and music. That came following Jonathan's announcement. So I just want to be very clear about that Pastor Dave is going to step into that role because it's freed up now that Jonathan is pursuing a career to be an electrician. And so also part of what Dave is going to begin doing then is to directly oversee Jonathan's work in his part-time role, supporting our worship with all of the technology that goes along with that, all of the equipment, sound equipment, light equipment, live streaming stuff. Jonathan's really going to take care of that. So Dave and Jonathan are going to work closely together on that. What do I begin doing in July that will be new to me? I'm going to have a much larger role in our preaching and adult discipleship programs. Those things are going to come off of Dave's plate and onto my plate during the months of July through December. And I'm really excited and looking forward to begin to work in those capacities. And I'm excited that I'll still get to work very closely with Dave on worship and music, and Jonathan too. So that's kind of the intermediary step that begins in July and runs through the summer and fall. Now I want you to keep your eyes on this right-hand column, okay? Keep your eyes there. We're just gonna slide that column over to the left-hand side of the page, okay? So that column remains the same. So that's what we just talked about. Now let's look at the next step that happens. In January 2021, Dave maintains and keeps the same ministries that he'd been working on starting in July. And really what we do in January is take one more thing off of his plate and add it to my plate. And that's when I would begin overseeing all staff, deacons, and church ministry if we decide that I should become the lead pastor. So I hope that all makes sense to you. We've had one or two questions come in about, some of this material is going by pretty quickly here during our presentation. We're going to have a lot of this in document form that you can look at on our Valley Media page after the meeting. And so if you want to really spend some more time with the information that we're presenting, you'll be able to have a document in front of you and you can look at it more carefully. But you can see kind of the progression of how Dave is going to take on the worship and music piece, but I'm excited that he's going to maintain a presence in our adult ministries. He's going to continue to oversee adult fellowship programs, be very active in pastoral care and visitation, help us reach out to the community. And like I said, I'm very excited about some of the new things that I begin to get to do and continue to help oversee what Mike and Micah are doing for our families in that area of our ministry. So we're going to pause here, Chris, is that right? And allow people to ask some questions about what we've just covered regarding the things we've laid out for the staff transitions. So friends, we're just gonna kind of pause here for a moment. If you have questions you'd like to submit through the Zoom Q&A feature, or if you want to use the comment sidebar on the YouTube live stream, Pastor Dave will feed those questions to us. So anything you're wondering about that we could answer right now?
Oh, this looks like something popped in from Tanjini Shoquist. Nope, maybe there's something else that came through. Looks like their question got answered. Oh wait, one of the transitions of Kirk, Amy, and Jackie, thanks. And then Dave said it's being explained. All right, good.
But I don't think, I think her question, Chris, is when will those things take place?
Oh, okay. Yeah, good point. So Jonathan will be full-time through June 30th. And then he'll be transitioning into his part-time position on July 1st. And as far as Kirk, Amy, and Jackie, that is actually gradually happening basically from this point on forward through the summer. We're going to be getting into budget season here, like I said earlier, in May. And as a result, we're going to have all hands on deck, including all three of them working on that project together, so that especially Jackie can learn a lot of the accounting and budgetary procedures that Kirk uses for running our budget as we get through that process. And then I think as we transition more of Kirk's other duties regarding facility management, remember that's another big part of what Kirk does for us, is that he takes care of our facilities and oversees the maintenance and facility functions. That's going to get transitioned off into more of a team approach through a facilities ministry. So that's going to be happening through the summer. Again, kind of hard to say with a lot of the stay-at-home stuff right now, but I think once things get out of the stay-at-home orders and we move into May and June, we'll have more clarity as to when we'll see Kirk heading off to go do some fishing.
All right. Let's see. Here's a question, Chris. What will the overall impact of these staff changes be to our church budget?
Yeah, so that was something that I was going to actually talk about when we got to the finance update, but it's a good question to talk about right now. Because we'll be moving from a Jonathan in a full-time position into a part-time position, and then basically changing and sharing the way that the hours work that we've been paying Kirk, and then moving those into some additional hours for our office staff. We end up, and I'll say also looking forward to the next fiscal year, the Board of Elders has already planned out a compensation plan with all these staff changes in mind, including Pastor Brad's transition to become lead pastor, looking forward and comparing from this fiscal year to next fiscal year, we're going to be spending approximately 12% less in staff compensation in our annual budget.
So an overall decrease to staff costs.
That is correct.
Wonderful. Good. Any other, we'll just pause here for one more minute. Any other questions on the church staffing changes that we've laid out? Thanks everybody for your careful attention. This is working very well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I think we should continue on. And again, we'll have another Q&A session here coming up in a little bit as we get through this next section of our presentation. So I just answered a little bit of a finance question. So why don't we talk a little bit more about finances, I guess. Basically, folks, this is not going to be a question regarding, a report with some big details. This is a high-level report. And the reason that we wanted to do this, we were actually going to do this generally speaking, based upon where we had been with a lot of our finance concerns that we had over the last fiscal year. But now that we've got the COVID-19 quarantine that we're dealing with and the impacts from that, we're bringing in some other pieces with regard to our finances. The one thing I can tell you is that we've been very, very attentive to our finances this year. If you can remember, for those of you that may back to last fall, I had spoken with the congregation about the fact that our giving had fallen behind a little bit and that we had actually depleted our emergency reserve and our operating fund, and we're spending into deficit because our giving had decreased so much. We also then made a call for the giving not only to increase, but also to then become more regular. And then in addition to that, thanks to some benefactors to get us kickstarted with it, we started the 1024 funds to help replenish not only the operating fund, but also the emergency reserve. And I can tell you that that has been going very, very well. We have been seeing an increase in regular giving. We've actually seen our biggest increase in giving over the last couple months, which is nice. And these aren't vast increases, but I think a big part of it is that people are just starting to get more into that habit, especially now that we're more mindful about the church is still going to be here. If you remember, we had our last in-person meeting as a church. It was the drive-in church. And I got up on the back of the pickup and I said, guess what? The church is still going to be here and we still need you to be giving your tithes and offerings. And people have been very faithful about that. So next bullet point, Valley is in a strong position financially. And the reason I can tell you that is because of all the indicators. We've had continued giving at a consistent level. And what I mean consistent is that we haven't seen big, huge valleys in our giving or dips in our giving week to week as of the last month or so. And we've returned the operating fund back to a positive value. Next bullet point, Jonathan. This is our biggest feature right now. We have extremely low debt. We, as you may know from our past covenant member meeting, that we did actually take out a small mortgage on our property so we could finish out the rest of our construction and our site work after we expanded and renovated the church. And some of that work is still continuing today, actually. We have a bit of work to do left for some drainage around the part of the church that was excavated, and our general contractor is taking care of that for us as we speak. We will not incur, as far as we know, we will not incur any further expense for that. And that was part of the reason as we took out part of that mortgage, just in case we had to cover any extra expenditures. And I think we're going to be able to take some of that we borrowed and just pay it right back off into the mortgage. So having that extremely low debt means, next bullet point, we only have a 5% debt to asset ratio. And that is fantastic position for us to be in, especially if we do start to see something change financially with our income. Next bullet point, Jonathan, like I said, the operating fund is back into the black. This is our fund that pays our day-to-day. We're not deficit spending anymore. And in addition, everything that we've been looking at as far as our budget moving through the year, we're probably going to end up the year ahead of the game, even though we'll probably be short on where we thought we were going to end up on giving. We are spending less than what we're taking in. So all of our expenses have been below budget. Last bullet point on this page. Finally, the emergency reserve is nearly replenished, and that is because of your faithful giving to the 1024 fund. That fund, whenever you give a gift that's specifically designated to the 1024 fund, your gift goes directly into the operating fund, and a matching gift goes in to replenish the emergency reserve. And we just crossed the $20,000 mark on that fund just about a week and a half ago. And so we're under $7,000, right around $7,000 left. And I think that we have every ability as God's faithful people to get that fund taken care of and get that emergency reserve completely replenished as we close out the fiscal year. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, one of the things that the Board of Elders is always doing in looking at our finances is thinking, okay, so how's our budget tracking? But now that we're in this position where we're kind of unsure what's going to happen with the economy. Well, we already know what's happening with it because of the COVID-19 crisis. And we had an elders meeting a couple of weeks ago where we actually virtually sat down and discussed what can we do reasonably right now to make sure we're protecting Valley's finances. So we did take some steps to make sure that we, of course, cut out any extra spending that we didn't have already budgeted for, or that we maybe budgeted for but didn't need to spend on. We turned the thermostats down in the building. In fact, when we got set up tonight, you can see that Pastor Brad is sitting actually in the fireside room. He's got the fireplace on because it's 58 degrees inside of the church right now. And that's one of the ways, you know, obviously we want our facilities to stay intact, but we also want to save money since we're not actively using them. So we're doing some cost-cutting measures that are simple and commonsensical right now. But then also we're able to project ahead and see what our budget's going to look like given any number of scenarios. And so the Board of Elders has been very proactive about that. Next bullet point, please, Jonathan. We've committed to these actions to keep us healthy during this time. Now, like I said, our giving has been great. So thank you for doing that. Please continue to do that. But we're not going to be naive about this. We know that there is going to be impacts. My family, I'm an airline pilot, and I haven't flown for a month, and I'm not going to be flying for another month and a half beyond now. My family is already being impacted by that. I know that other families are going to have impacts, and our neighbors will too. So it's just a realistic way for us to move forward and lead the church to say, let's be careful and take action now to keep us healthy in case we do see income start to decrease. Next bullet point, please. Finally, our budget process is starting, as I said before, next month. And since I already mentioned it, we're already looking at positives going into that process. We have spent less than what we've budgeted for the current fiscal year. We're looking ahead at a staffing structure that is going to trim down our staffing expenditures, which is our largest expenditure at Valley Christian Church, by 12%. And I think the way that we look at things moving forward is God has good plans for us always. And it's our job to seek out his will and find that way, find that path. And I think that the Board of Elders is doing a good job in doing that as it pertains to finances. I think that's the last bullet point I had there. Oh, we go. New fiscal year. That's a big one. So we'll get into this in a little bit later here in the presentation. But one of the things we've always done at Valley Christian Church, it's always seemed kind of backwards to a lot of people, and it is somewhat backwards, is we always tend to have a budget that we approve that's already been running. We'll end up putting together a budget based upon a fiscal year that runs from July 1st to June 30th. And we don't approve it until like August. And the Board of Elders has been thinking about that and said, you know what, maybe it's time we just change that right now. We have passed a resolution at the Board of Elders that I'll be asking the covenant membership to approve a change to our bylaws at the annual meeting in August to change our new fiscal year to run from September through August. So the way this is going to look is that we're going to go through the budget process in the next couple months. We're going to have a budget put together that you will then, the covenant membership will see at the covenant member meeting in August, which is the same time they'll be approving us moving to a fiscal year that starts September 1st and being able to vote on a budget that starts on September 1st. So none of this approving the budget in the wrong direction, putting the cart in front of the horse type of a thing, that's going to be done with. And I think will give us nice clarity going forward. As far as the months intervening between the current fiscal year and the coming fiscal year, the new fiscal year, we're basically just going to stay the path with how we're running the church fiscally in a budgetary sense in July and August, which is what we've done always in years past anyway. So all we're doing is stretching out the current fiscal 19-20 budget 2 more months, and then starting the new fiscal year in September. And I'll remind us about that as we get into the Q&A and talk about our meeting reminders later on in the presentation. So before we move on to our worship changes, Brad, should we pause? I know there's been a couple of Q&As that have come in. Should we pause to kind of
let's do it? I want to just talk about a little bit about the rationale, Chris, about changing the fiscal year. Speaking as a pastor, it always feels to us like the church year kind of begins in September. That's when, you know, we're kind of ramping back up for program. So I think just in a programmatic way to have a fiscal year from September through August really matches the kind of the way we think about our church program year running, and to have those two in sync is going to be very helpful, I think.
I agree. Yep. Kind of matches throughout the church calendar year. A lot better. Yeah.
So any questions on church budget finances going forward?
It looks like Jan had asked a question earlier that we missed right when we were going through the staff transition part. And she asked, will we be able to give Micah and Mike more hours? And will Dave continue to teach? And he did partially, he's running our chat on the YouTube section. And he did mention that Micah, number one, already has another job. He is also employed by Breeze. And so he's currently not able to take more hours. We would love to have Micah all to ourselves, but Micah unfortunately is employed also by Breeze. And then to the second part or I should say, first of all, for Mike, possibly some more for Mike. That's something that we're looking forward to, possibly what the transition looks like, what the fall programming looks like. So that's to be determined. And then Dave, of course, he's going to keep teaching. Absolutely, he's going to be teaching more.
Yeah.
So,
just try to stop him, right?
Yeah.
Try to stop him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So anything else? I don't see anything in the Q&A window. Dave says no new questions in the last 5 minutes.
Okay.
Shall we get the worship changes?
Yeah, let's move ahead. Jonathan, if you can go back to the PowerPoint, please. And let's go to the next slide here. Friends, when we can get back together in person for Sunday worship, we would like to, we're planning to have a change in our Sunday morning schedule. And I'm going to tell you what the change looks like, and then I'm going to share with you some of the reasons and rationale behind our thinking. What we would like to do is to have a standalone Sunday school hour for all ages at 9 o'clock in the morning. So Sunday school classes for all ages with several options for adults. And at 9 o'clock, that's the only thing that's happening, is just Christian education. So then at 10:15, we would like to have one worship service on Sunday mornings, okay, where we can all gather together. And we would run that worship hour. At least for kids, it would sort of look like what our 10:30 service looks like now. During the entire worship service, we would offer care for nursery and preschool through kindergarten children through the entire service. We would have the first through fifth grade children with us for the first part of the service, and then they would be dismissed to a junior church time before the sermon. And then we're also wanting to re-offer, some of you have been around long enough to remember when Valley has done evensong worship in the past. And that's just another worship time. It has a little different flavor than our Sunday morning worship, has more of an acoustic kind of feel to the songs, and the message is usually offered in a little more of a discussion type of setting. And we can do that because evensong has typically been a smaller worship gathering. But we like that as a real alternative worship time for people who can't be with us on Sunday mornings because of their work schedules, or because they're, maybe out of town for the weekend, but could come back to town, for a 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon worship experience. So 9 o'clock Sunday school for the whole family, 10:15 worship hour for everyone, and then a 4 p.m. Sunday evensong worship. And I just want to remind you that before we moved buildings, when we were still at Glacier Way, this was what our Sunday morning looked like, was a 9 o'clock Sunday school hour followed by one worship service. And when we moved here to the new property in Lakeville, we found that our sanctuary was too small for us to do one worship service all together. And so that's when we began to go to 2 worship hours on Sunday morning. Jonathan, if you could go ahead one slide. Here's some of our thinking on why we think this is a good move for us. And Chris, I'm going to ask you if you could just be monitoring some of the questions that are coming in as I walk through this. I see that there are several coming in. And if it's good for us to pause at any point, please feel free to, interject if you'd like to.
Yep, I think we're still good for now, but I'm watching them.
Okay. We think that this will have a positive impact on our church community. I think especially coming out of the season that we're in right now, during this time when we can't meet together, when we are able to get back together, we would love to be able to be all together. And our larger worship center can accommodate the attendance numbers that we've been running lately. And so we would like to move toward that. We believe that this would encourage participation in our discipleship classes, so that 9 o'clock hour, there's nothing competing with that, and we can all be involved in a Sunday morning class. And friends, I can't stress to you enough how important we as pastors and elders feel about that we would love your participation. Get your kids in their classes, but then we would love for you to be in a class and growing in that way as well. We feel that this will reduce some of the stress on our volunteer needs for both our worship ministries and maybe to a lesser degree our kids ministries, but we think that we can take some of the pressure off our volunteer need for those 2 ministry areas. We believe that it would help with our first impressions. We could create a vibrant and energetic environment for guests. When guests come in, I don't have to tell you that sometimes at the beginning of that 9 a.m. service, the worship sanctuary is fairly empty. And we would love it if when guests came in, they saw a bustling atrium and a full worship center, and really get the sense because this is true that Valley is a really healthy and thriving church community. And then adding the evensong service at 4 p.m., we feel like would be an avenue for outreach for those who can't make it, you know, on Sunday mornings, that it offers a true alternative more than a 9 o'clock service and a 10:30 service. It really creates a different time and opens up some new possibilities for us. So those are some of our plans and our thinking about the adjustments we'd like to make to our worship schedule. And so let's pause here. Chris, it looks like this has generated a lot of discussion and feedback. So what are you seeing on some of the questions?
Yeah, and we might have to go back just a bit here on some of the other topics too. So I'm going to go back first of all to talk about one of the things regarding the staff changes. We had a question that came in about maintaining our church facilities with Kirk's retirement, and I wanted to just I think I kind of spoke about that pretty quickly, so I want to cover that real quick again. With regard to taking care of our church facilities, our plan, the Valley Elders plan, is to put together basically a facilities ministry, almost something that we might even put a deacon role in charge of. But basically, we have already a great core of volunteers at Valley Christian Church that help take care of the church. And that includes people that are constantly doing things like lawn work and snow shoveling, but also just little maintenance items around the church. And our church has really functioned like that, even on our old property up at Glacier Way, it was like that too. So we're going to be going back to that kind of a format. We're going to be bringing in people in sort of a volunteer manner to help do the punch list, to kind of take care of things. And the day-to-day is still going to happen without any problem. Custodial issues already being addressed as well. So we won't have any gap in taking care of our facilities. And then rolling into our questions regarding ministries. First of all, we have a question about, hey, Brad, how are we going to take care of our special needs ministries when we go to the single service format?
Yep. We envision that we would want to work closely with our special needs families and really do our best to coordinate care. I believe both of those times, and we're looking at opening up some more options for families during the 10:15 worship service. But that's something that Pastor Micah and Katie Putt, our deacon of special needs ministry, that we're going to be working hard on, and we are not going to leave our special needs families behind in any way. And so we're going to move forward in conversation with them. And our hope is that we can continue to meet their needs according to how they, tell us that their desires to be involved in classes and to be involved in worship on Sunday mornings. And we're going to do our best according to the staff that we have. And if we need to expand that staff, we will seek to do that.
Great. Another question that came up about if we have enough space with one service. You did address that when you're talking about this. When we moved from Glacier Way down to Iberia, we didn't have the space to have a single service. And so that's one of the reasons we needed to do the expansion. But now we actually did finish that project. We have actually room now, and this is by the architect's design, to actually put in 300 people in worship in a single service if we needed to. There's another question that came up regarding parking, and if we're going to have parking that's available if we go to single service. That was actually a requirement in our architectural design when we did the expansion, that we had enough parking spaces around Valley Christian Church that would accommodate the number of people that would be there at any one time. So parking won't be an issue. We are going to be expanding out a couple of different more, I think we still have plans in the works to get more accessible parking spots laid down around the west entrance and the side entrance of the church. But beyond that, the other parking lot expansion that we did is going to cover everything we need for the amount of people that will be coming in for that.
Yep. And
The next question, oh, go ahead.
and the parking, Chris, the parking spaces and the disability parking spaces are directly connected to our capacity in our worship center. So we feel confident that both of those are going to work just fine.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yep.
We have a question, Brad, regarding the volunteers and whether or not volunteers will still be signing up to do volunteering quarterly in the children's department, specifically with nursery and preschool areas.
Yep. That's an excellent question. And that's something that we're going to work through with Pastor Micah. And for all of you who are serving in our children's ministries, I want you to know that we are going to connect with you personally in our next time when we're able to get all together. And we're going to work through those issues together and make sure that we come up with a schedule that works for you. And that's an excellent observation, that to miss a quarter of worship, 13 weeks of worship, that's an untenable situation. And so I think we're going to have to think about what the move to one service means for our children's ministry volunteers. And again, want to assure them that we're going to listen to what they're telling us, what they think is a workable situation, and we'll come up with a plan that is agreeable to all of us.
Awesome. We had a question come in about, and I was actually trying to look at some of the questions floating through, and I might have missed that if you said it, but we have a question about the new, are there going to be age groups going to be the same? Are there going to be new age groups for kids ministries? And did you mention when we're going to be doing Move Up?
Oh, no, I didn't mention that. Well, it looks like we're going to be doing promotion, probably just as soon as we're able to get back together in person. We had planned to do that in the month of May, but kind of with how church has moved to the online format, I think we're going to kind of remain static in terms of our age groups right now. But when in-person programming resumes, then we're going to welcome kids who are moving from elementary school into middle school into high school, and things like that. And regarding the dismissal for junior church, our idea is for the one service that we're going to provide care during the entire service for nursery through kindergarten children, and then grades 1 through 5 would be dismissed for junior church, which is exactly what we're doing during the second worship service right now. So that's going to remain the same.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing anything roll in right now. Let's go ahead and flip back to the presentation for just a couple minutes, Jonathan. And I want to let everyone know about our upcoming meetings. And then we'll do one final Q&A and close out for the evening. But again, thanks everyone for your questions. This has been great. Good information. Please remember that if you're not able to use the technology on either the Zoom app or the YouTube sidebar, that you can always email office@valleycc.org. So looking forward to our next meetings, not just the in-person church. We want church happening right now, but we have the annual covenant member meeting that'll be coming up in August. We've set the dates. This is kind of a save the date thing. We're going to be getting save the dates handouts ready so that we can have these in your hands when you get back into church in person here in May, hopefully. But our annual covenant member meeting is going to be August 19th. At this meeting, next couple bullet points there, Jonathan, we're going to vote the change to the fiscal year definition. Again, changing the fiscal year to run from September to August. We're going to approve, we're going to present and then ask for your approval of our fiscal year budget for the next fiscal year. And of course, we always have our election of our elders, and we'll have, I think, at least 2 elders coming up on term renewal. And right now, the Board of Elders is actually in the process of possibly pulling together some apprenticeships for over the summer here. And then our next meeting after that, we're going to have a special covenant member meeting on January 6th, 2021. Mark your calendars. This is an important meeting in the history of Valley Christian Church. This is the meeting where we will be approving Brad Dewing as our lead pastor. That is the intent of the meeting. We need to have a special meeting as we need to take a vote to actually move him from being a transition pastor into becoming our lead pastor at Valley Christian Church. And no other business is planned for that meeting, but those are the save the dates, August 19th and then January 6th. So I think we're at the end of the presentation, everyone. If you do have any last questions, to pop in on the YouTube chat or else on the Q&A. Oh, looks like we might have one here. Oh, January 6th is Todd Shokw's 55th birthday. That's good to know. Not a question. But thank you very much for letting us know.
So mark your calendars for that too.
That's right. Good deal. I think.
All right. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in on Zoom, and the chat window is also quiet. But any final things that you'd like to communicate, Chris?
I would just say to everyone, number one, thank you for participating on this. I've been kind of looking back and forth between the YouTube. I've got it on an iPad over here, and then also on my computer here as we run the Zoom functionality. And it looks like we've had around 29 to 32 people watching live on the YouTube stream. And then we've had 40 participants on the Zoom. And that's great. That's fantastic, church, because that means that we've had the majority of regular attenders, I can say, are a part of this, and probably our covenant members as well. A reminder to make sure to reach out to us with questions. If you have any, please do. You can reach all the elders by emailing us at elders@valleycc.org. You can email the staff members by emailing staff@valleycc.org. You can go on the website, use the contact form. If you have questions specifically for Jonathan and Kirk about their announcements, reach out to them personally. Questions about where we're going with the church, direction-wise, leadership-wise, financially, please do feel free to reach out to myself or any one of our elders. Beyond that, I'm not seeing any other Q&As, but a quick reminder, we had to preempt our Valley Prayer Night on Facebook Live with Elder Dewey Roth. So please do join him tomorrow on Facebook Live for the prayer time with Dewey. And I think that's at 7
o'clock. Yep,
7 p.m.
Yep.
That's right. And we also have our youth group happening, I think, about the same time.
7:30.
7:30. Perfect.
Yep.
I know that Pastor Mike has been setting up the stream of the Facebook stream onto Zoom so that some of the youth can participate in prayer, which is awesome. Just
right.
Mind-blowing how church is happening these days.
I know.
But I think that'll do it. Anything else from you, Brad?
No, perhaps I can just close in prayer for us. And you've really laid out well. We would love further conversation about anything we've talked about tonight. So please feel free to reach out. Let me pray for us.
All right.
God, it's exciting and it's a blessing to be a part of such an engaged church community and family. We thank you for the interest and the participation of our church family tonight. Change is difficult, God, and to hear that there are going to be changes on our staff team and to try to digest some of the new plans that we have when we're able to get back together. God, I pray that we would all appreciate our church family, that we would be open to the possibilities that you want to lead us into. But God, we welcome good, robust conversation about how that's going to affect us. And so help us to continue to think well about these changes also. Thank you for leading us, Lord Jesus. We pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Valley Christian Church.
Thank you, Kirk. Thank you, Jonathan, for running the show, and Dave for helping us with the questions. And good night, everybody. Oh,
Good
a
night.
few late questions.
Oh, whoa. A few late questions. Let's see what they are.
Okay, Dave is
All right.
going to queue them up for us.
All right. I see one from a question of this off of the YouTube stream. How many covenant members do we currently have? I think this is just a rough estimate, but I think we have about 130-ish, 140, maybe around 130, 140 is, I think,
Yeah,
the actual covenant member roll. Does that sound right?
135, Amy Het says, and she's
Perfect.
kind of the keeper of our database, so she would know. 135. I see a question here from Cecil wondering about how soon will the Sunday morning change takes place. The idea there is that as soon as we're able to begin meeting in person again, that we are going to be in that new schedule. We don't know when that's going to be. We anticipate that perhaps we're going to be able to do some drive-in services before we're able to get back together in person inside the church building. So just keep an eye on communication. We'll try to be very clear what the plan is, but as soon as we're able to get back together in the building, it will be a 9 a.m. Sunday school hour and a 10:15 worship service.
Awesome.
Okay.
Going once, going twice.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.